I wasn't supposed to be home that afternoon. Maybe that's why they were so careless, voices drifting up from Dad's study like smoke through the floorboards. I'd come back early from my shift at the gallery, paint still crusted under my fingernails from helping Theo reorganize his studio. The house was quiet except for those voices, Mom's high-pitched protests, Dad's measured tone, and Livia's familiar whine. "It's not like she's actually going to art school," Livia was saying. "Be realistic. Cala's little paintings are cute, but they're not going to pay the bills." I froze on the stairs, one hand gripping the banister. Through the crack in the door, I could see Mom perched on the edge of Dad's leather chair, her perfect posture betraying her tension. "The money's already set aside for her education," Mom said, but her voice wavered. "Which is exactly why it makes sense," Livia pressed. "My business plan is solid. The boutique would start turning a profit within 6 months. Cala can go to community college like everyone else." I waited for Dad to defend me, to remind them about the scholarship offers, the recognition from local galleries, the years I'd spent building my portfolio. Instead, I heard the familiar creak of his chair as he leaned back. "Your sister's venture does have merit," he said. "And with the market being what it is." The rest of his words faded into white noise. My fingers traced the wallpaper, finding the spot where I'd once drawn a tiny flower in permanent marker. Mom had been furious, but Dad had laughed and called it my first masterpiece. I was 6 then. Things were different. "It's decided then?" Livia's voice cut through my memories. "The college fund goes to the boutique." "Livia, darling, perhaps we should discuss this with." "No, Mira. Livia's right. We need to be practical. The boutique is a sound investment." I pushed the door open. 3 heads snapped toward me, expressions shifting from surprise to guilt to, in Livia's case, something like triumph. "Cala," Mom started, rising from her chair. "We didn't hear you come in." Clearly. My voice sounded strange, distant. "Were you planning to tell me you're giving away my future? Or was I supposed to figure it out when the tuition check bounced?" "Don't be dramatic," Livia sighed, examining her manicure. "You can still go to school. Just somewhere more reasonable." Dad cleared his throat. "Your sister has presented a very compelling business plan. Sometimes we have to make difficult decisions for the good of the family." "The family?" I laughed, the sound sharp and foreign. "When has this family ever made decisions for anyone except Livia?" "That's enough," Dad snapped. "If you can't discuss this rationally." "Rationally? You're stealing my college fund to finance another one of Livia's schemes. Just like the fashion blog, the jewelry line, the organic cafe. Those were learning experiences," Livia cut in, her perfectly painted lips twisting. "This is different. I have investors lined up, connections." "Of course you do. You always do. And they always fall through. But Mom and Dad keep throwing good money after bad, because heaven forbid the golden child face consequences." "Gaya." Mom's voice cracked like a whip. "Apologize to your sister." I looked at them, really looked at them. Mom's carefully maintained facade, Dad's stern disappointment, Livia's practiced pout. They were exactly as they'd always been, and suddenly I was tired of trying to fit into their picture-perfect family portrait. "No," I said quietly. "I don't think I will." I turned and walked out, ignoring their calls. My phone was already in my hand, fingers shaking as I dialed the one person who'd never let me down. "Grandma? It's Cala. Can I come stay with you for a while? I need somewhere to go." Grandma Etta's spare room smelled like mothballs and possibility. Morning light streamed through dusty windows, catching the particles we'd stirred up while moving old furniture. She stood in the doorway, watching me drag a heavy dresser across worn floorboards. "We could hire someone to do this," she said, but I shook my head. "I need to do it myself." My arms ached, but each piece of furniture I moved felt like reclaiming something. "Besides, I have plans for this space." Etta's eyes crinkled. "Your mother called again this morning." I kept working, focusing on the scratch of wood against wood. "What did she want?" "The usual. To remind me that you're being unreasonable, that families should stick together." Etta's laugh was dry. "I told her that's exactly why you're here." I was about to respond when my phone buzzed. A text from Theo. "Gallery opening tonight. Bringing some people you should meet. Don't skip this one." "Good news?" Etta asked. "Maybe. There's an opening at Theo's gallery." I stopped short as voices drifted up from the driveway. Familiar voices. Etta moved to the window, her expression darkening. "Well, this is unexpected." I joined her, my stomach dropping at the sight of Livia's red convertible. She stepped out, designer sunglasses perched on her head, followed by Dax in his perfectly tailored suit. They looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine cover, completely out of place in Etta's quiet neighborhood. "I'll handle this," Etta said, but I touched her arm. "No, let me." I straightened my paint-stained t-shirt. It's time I started handling Livia myself. I met them at the front door before they could knock. Livia's smile was razor-sharp. "Baby sister," she cooed. "You've been ignoring our calls." "I've been busy." I blocked the doorway with my body. "What do you want?" "Can I check on my sister?" She tried to peer past me into the house. "Mom and Dad are worried sick." "They're worried about their investment, you mean?" The words tasted bitter. "How's the boutique planning going?" Dax stepped forward, all charm and perfect teeth. "Actually, that's partly why we're here. We've been thinking, there might be a place for you in the business." "A place for me?" I couldn't help laughing. "Let me guess, unpaid intern?" "Visual merchandising director," Livia corrected, as if offering me a gift. "Your art background would be perfect. We'd even pay for some business courses at the community college." The audacity of it hit me like a physical blow. They'd stolen my future and now wanted to sell it back to me piece by piece. "That's generous," I said carefully. "But I already have a job. And a mentor." "Oh, right. The gallery." Livia's tone dripped condescension. "Sweetheart, playing assistant to a washed-up artist isn't a career. Theo Lang isn't washed up. He's about to lose his gallery space," Dax interrupted smoothly. "We heard through our real estate connections. The building's being sold." My chest tightened. Theo hadn't mentioned anything about losing the gallery. "You're lying." "Why would we lie?" Livia stepped closer, lowering her voice. "We're trying to help you, Calla. Come home. Work with us. Be part of something real." I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Behind the perfect makeup and practiced smile, I saw something I'd never noticed before: fear. Whatever was happening with the boutique, she was scared. "I am part of something real," I said finally. "And I think you should leave. Kaya. Now." I closed the door on their protests, leaning against it until I heard their car start. Upstairs, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Theo. Important news. Need to talk before the opening. I stared at the message, Dax's words echoing in my head. Something was wrong, and for once, I intended to find out exactly what before it blindsided me. "Etta," I called up the stairs. "I need to borrow your car." Theo's gallery was dark when I arrived, but his car sat in the back lot. Through the window, I could see him hunched over his desk, surrounded by stacks of papers. My stomach knotted. Maybe Dax hadn't been lying after all. The back door clicked open at my touch. "You're getting careless," I called out. Theo's head snapped up, papers scattering. "Jesus, calla. Wear a bell." "Sorry, I wasn't." "Want to tell me about the building being sold?" His expression shifted, something like guilt crossing his features. "How did you?" "Doesn't matter." "Is it true?" "Sit down." He gestured to a chair, but I remained standing. "The owner's selling to developers. They're turning the whole block into luxury condos." "When?" 3 months. He ran a hand through his hair. "I've been looking at other spaces, but the rent everywhere else." I picked up one of the scattered papers, a bank statement covered in red ink. "Is that why you canceled my last 2 lessons?" "Kaya. Don't lie to me." My voice cracked. "Not you too." Theo sighed, suddenly looking older than his 35 years. "I should have told you sooner. But there's something else you need to know." He pulled out his phone, showing me a social media post. "Your sister's been busy." The image showed Livia standing in front of an elegant storefront, champagne glass raised. The caption read, "Thanks to our amazing investors. Can't wait to transform this historic space into something spectacular. #Emerson Boutique." The address made my blood run cold. It was Theo's gallery. "She knew," I whispered. "When they came to Etta's today, they already knew." "There's more." Theo handed me another paper. "Your father's signature is on the investment documents. He's backing her completely." The paper crumpled in my fist. "They're not just taking my college fund. They're taking everything." "Not everything." Theo stood, moving to a covered canvas in the corner. "Remember that piece you were working on? The one about family ties?" He pulled off the sheet, revealing my unfinished painting. A tangle of golden chains breaking apart, some links tarnished and corroding. "Finish it," he said. "The gallery's hosting one final show before we close. Make it count." I stared at the canvas, an idea taking shape. "The investors will be there? Everyone who's anyone in town. Your family included, I'm sure." My phone buzzed, a text from Etta. "Found something you should see. Come home when you can." "I have to go," I said, already moving toward the door. "But Theo, thank you for telling me the truth." "Kaya." His voice stopped me. Whatever you're planning, just remember that revenge and justice aren't always the same thing. I thought about Livia's fear earlier, about Dad's signature on those documents, about all the times they'd dismissed my art as worthless while planning to destroy the one place that had believed in me. Maybe they should be. The drive back to Etta's was a blur. I found her in her study, surrounded by old files and photographs. "Look at this," she said without preamble, holding out a yellowed newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Local business empire built on stolen art? Monroe Gallery accusations surface." Monroe Gallery? I took the clipping. But that was your grandfather's gallery, before your father married into the family and merged the businesses. Etta's eyes were hard, before certain pieces mysteriously disappeared from the collection. "Why are you showing me this now?" "Because history has a way of repeating itself." She handed me another file. "And because I think it's time you knew exactly what kind of people you're dealing with." I opened the file, and suddenly all the pieces started falling into place. The boutique, the gallery purchase, Dad's desperate need to maintain appearances. This wasn't just about my future anymore. This was about something much bigger, something that had been building for years. And I knew exactly what my next painting would be about. The cough started small, just a tickle in Etta's throat during breakfast. By afternoon, she was gasping between words, her face pale against the hospital pillows. I clutched her medical files, still warm from the printer, while doctors spoke in hushed tones outside her room. "You should call your mother," Etta said, her voice raspy. "I'm not calling anyone." I arranged her pillows, avoiding her knowing gaze. "Besides, I need to finish the piece for Theo's final show. It's in 2 weeks. Gaia." She caught my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. Some things are more important than revenge. Before I could respond, a nurse bustled in with medication. My phone buzzed Theo again. I stepped into the hallway to answer. "Where are you?" "The collectors are here." "I can't make it. Etta's in the hospital." A pause. "Is she okay?" "They're running tests." I pressed my forehead against the cool window glass. "I'll work on the piece tonight, I promise." "Forget the piece. Take care of your grandmother." His voice softened. "But Calla?" Dax was here asking questions about the old Monroe Gallery records. My stomach dropped. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. But he seemed very interested in the provenance of certain pieces. Pieces that disappeared around the time your father took over." Through the window, I watched Etta doze fitfully. The newspaper clipping she'd shown me felt heavy in my pocket. "I have to go," I said, hanging up as my mother's voice echoed down the corridor. "Where is she? Where's my mother?" I stepped back into Etta's room just as Mom burst in, designer handbag swinging. She froze when she saw me. "You didn't tell us," she accused. "Funny how that feels, isn't it?" "Girls." Etta's voice cracked between us like a whip. "Not now." Mom moved to the bed, her perfect makeup already smudging. "The doctors said pneumonia. Why didn't you call us sooner?" "Because I'm handling it," I said, but the words sounded hollow even to me. "Like you're handling everything else?" Mom's laugh was bitter. "Your father had to hear about your special piece for Theo's show from his investors. They're worried about negative publicity." "They should be. What's that supposed to mean?" "Ask Dad about the Monroe Gallery pieces." I pulled out the newspaper clipping. "Ask him what really happened to Grandpa's collection." Mom's face went white. Behind her, Etta started coughing again, harder this time. "You don't understand what you're talking about," Mom whispered. "I understand enough." I moved toward the door. "Tell Dad his secrets aren't safe anymore. Neither are Livia's." "Calla, wait." But I was already gone, running down sterile corridors until I reached Etta's car. My hands shook as I started the engine. The drive to my makeshift studio was automatic, muscle memory taking over while my mind raced. The canvas waited, half-finished. Golden chains transforming into serpents, family portraits burning at the edges. But it wasn't enough anymore. Not with Etta lying in that hospital bed. Not with everything I'd learned. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Smart girl, digging up the past. "Want to know more?" Dax. Of course he'd play both sides. I started to delete the message, then stopped. Maybe it was time to fight fire with fire. I picked up my brush, staring at the canvas. The piece needed something else, not just exposure, but truth. Real truth, not just revenge. Etta's words echoed in my head. Some things are more important than revenge. She was right, but sometimes justice and revenge could be the same thing, if you were willing to pay the price. I texted back one word. "When?" Dax was waiting in the corner booth of the diner, his perfect suit out of place among the vinyl seats and chipped coffee cups. He pushed a manila envelope across the table before I could sit down. "Everything you need to know about the Monroe Gallery scandal," he said, "including what your father did to your grandfather's collection." I left the envelope untouched. "Why are you helping me?" "Let's just say Livia isn't the only one with investment troubles." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "The boutique is hemorrhaging money before it even opens. Your father's desperate enough to leverage everything, including pieces that technically don't belong to him. The stolen artwork. Borrowed," he corrected smoothly, "though the original owners might disagree." My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. "Ed is asking for you. Please come back." "What do you want in return?" I asked Dax, ignoring the message. "Protection. When this breaks, I want it clear I helped expose the truth." He leaned forward. "And I want my initial investment back." "How much?" $200,000. Your sister's quite persuasive when she wants something." The amount hit me like a physical blow. That was more than my college fund, more than... Another text. "Her fever's worse. She needs you here." "I have to go." I stood, finally taking the envelope. "But this doesn't make us allies." "Of course not." His smile widened. "By the way, how is dear grandmother Etta? I heard she's not doing well." The threat in his voice was subtle but clear. I left without responding, the envelope burning in my bag. At the hospital, I found Theo outside Etta's room, his expression grim. "What are you doing here?" "Your mother called me." He nodded toward the room. "She's been asking for you. Talking about some old paintings in her attic." My heart stuttered. "What paintings?" "Gaia." He caught my arm as I moved toward the door. "Whatever you're planning with Dax, be careful. He's not on your side." "No one is." "That's not true and you know it." Inside, Etta was propped up against pillows, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Mom sat beside her, holding her hand. "There she is." Etta's voice was barely a whisper. "My artist." "I'm here." I took her other hand, noticing how cold her fingers felt. "I'm sorry I left." "The paintings," she said. "In my attic. Behind the false wall." Mom's head snapped up. "What false wall?" "Your father's favorites." Etta's eyes found mine. "The ones he couldn't bear to sell. I kept them safe all these years." "Mother, what are you talking about?" But I knew. The missing pieces from the Monroe Gallery. The ones Dad had supposedly sold to cover debts. The ones he was now using as collateral for Livia's failing boutique. "Show them." Etta squeezed my hand. "Show everyone the truth. But remember, the truth without compassion is just another weapon." Her monitors started beeping faster. Mom jumped up to call for nurses while I stood frozen, the weight of Etta's words settling over me like a shroud. My phone buzzed one final time, Dax again. Tick-tock. "The boutique opens in a week. How much is your silence worth?" I looked at Etta, fighting for breath in her hospital bed. At Mom, her carefully maintained facade cracking. At the envelope in my bag that could destroy everything. The truth without compassion is just another weapon. But sometimes, I thought, watching the nurses rush in, sometimes weapons are exactly what you need. I pulled out my phone and texted Theo. "The final show. I know what I need to paint." It was time to stop playing defense. Time to show them all exactly what art could do. The gallery hummed with opening night energy, champagne glasses clinking as Seattle's elite circled my paintings like vultures. My centerpiece remained covered, a massive canvas that had consumed the last week of my life. Theo kept shooting me worried glances from across the room. "Quite the turnout." Dax materialized beside me, champagne in hand. "Shame about Etta. The doctors say she might not make it through the night." My fingers tightened around my water glass. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "Just making conversation." He nodded toward the entrance. "Looks like the gang's all here." Mom and Dad walked in, Livia between them like a shield. They looked perfect, polished, everything our family was supposed to be. Dad's eyes locked onto the covered canvas. "Last chance," Dax murmured. "Walk away now, and I'll make sure you get a percentage of the boutique profits." "You mean the boutique that's already failing?" His smile tightened. "Careful, Calla. Some paintings are better left in the attic." He disappeared into the crowd as Theo stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our final show at the gallery. Tonight's featured piece comes from our youngest artist." My phone buzzed the hospital. I let it go to voicemail, moving toward my canvas as Theo continued his introduction. Mom caught my eye, shaking her head slightly. "A warning." "And now," Theo said, "I present Family Legacy by Calla Emerson." I pulled the sheet away. The crowd gasped. The painting showed the Monroe Gallery's main hall, but twisted, warped. Famous paintings hung on the walls, the missing pieces from Grandpa's collection. But in my version, they were burning, their edges curling into golden chains that wrapped around figures I'd painted to look like my family. Dad stood central, pulling the chains tight while Livia counted money that turned to ash in her hands. And there, in the background, barely visible, documentation of the original sales, the fake provenance papers, all the evidence from Dax's envelope woven into the scene. That's not. Dad stepped forward, face pale. Those paintings were sold legally. Were they? I turned to face him. Or did you steal them from Grandpa when he got sick? The same way you're stealing my future for Livia? Enough. Mom grabbed my arm. Your grandmother is dying, and this is how you choose to. To what? Tell the truth. I pulled away. The paintings are in Etta's attic. The real ones. She kept them safe from you. Livia pushed through the crowd. You're lying. Dad would never. Like your husband would never betray you. I met Dax's eyes across the room. Show them the investment papers, Dax. Show them where the money really went. The gallery erupted in whispers. Livia turned to Dax, who was already backing toward the door. What investment papers? My phone buzzed again, the hospital. This time I answered. Miss Emerson? You need to come now. Your grandmother. The phone slipped from my fingers. The room spun. Theo caught my arm as I stumbled. I have to. Etta's. Go, he said. I'll handle things here. I ran for the door, but Dad blocked my path. You've destroyed everything, he said quietly. Are you happy now? Behind him, I could see my painting, truth and revenge blazing on canvas, burning bridges I could never rebuild. Livia was crying. Mom was trying to quiet the murmuring crowd, and Dax was nowhere to be seen. Move, I whispered. Please. He stepped aside, but his words followed me into the night. You're no better than the rest of us now. Maybe he was right. Maybe Etta had been wrong about compassion. Maybe I'd finally become exactly what they always thought I was. Just another Emerson, destroying everything I touched. I gunned the engine, praying I wasn't too late to say goodbye. I made it to Etta's room just as the monitors flatlined. Mom stood by the window, shoulders shaking. A nurse was calling time of death. The world narrowed to the sound of my own heartbeat, drowning out everything else. She left this for you. Mom held out an envelope, her voice raw. Said to give it to you right after. I took it mechanically but couldn't open it. Not yet. Not with Etta's body still warm. The paintings I managed. We need to. Already taken care of. Dad appeared in the doorway, looking older than I'd ever seen him. The police are at the house. Dax confessed everything. What? He's been embezzling from multiple investors, not just us. Using the boutique as a front. Dad's laugh was hollow. Turns out we're all fools. Livia pushed past him into the room, mascara streaked down her face. Is it true? About the paintings? I nodded, unable to speak. Why didn't you just tell us? She demanded. Why make it so public? Would you have listened? I looked at each of them, my perfect broken family. Would any of you have heard me if I'd whispered instead of screamed? Mom moved toward me, but I stepped back. My fingers found the edge of Etta's envelope, tearing it open. Inside was a key and a letter. Read it, Mom whispered. Please. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper. My dearest Calla, by now you've shown them your truth. But truth without healing is just another kind of poison. The paintings in the attic aren't just art. They're a chance to rebuild. Your grandfather never sold them because he believed art should unite families, not divide them. The key opens more than just the attic. It opens a future where you can be both strong and compassionate. Choose wisely. All my love. Etta. There's more, Dad said quietly. The estate. She left everything to you. The house, the paintings, all of it. Livia made a choked sound. After what she did tonight. After she humiliated us. After I told the truth. I corrected. There's a difference. And what are you going to do with that truth? Mom asked. With the paintings? I looked at the key in my hand, thinking about Etta's words. About poison and healing. About the difference between revenge and justice. I'm going to start an art scholarship, I said finally. In Etta's name. The paintings will be displayed publicly, with their real history. No more secrets. You'd give away your inheritance? Livia stared at me. Not give away. Share. I met Dad's eyes. The way Grandpa wanted. The way it should have been all along. The room fell silent except for the soft sounds of the hospital beyond. Dad's shoulders sagged, decades of secrets finally lifting. I'll make it right, he said. Whatever it takes. We all will, Mom added, reaching for my hand. This time, I let her take it. Livia moved to the window, her reflection fractured in the glass. I never meant. With Dax and the money. I just wanted to be special. I finished. Yeah, me too. She turned, really looking at me for maybe the first time. I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But as I stood in that hospital room, holding Etta's key and letter, I realized it was a start. The truth had broken us, but maybe, just maybe, it could rebuild us too. The gallery opens in an hour, I said. The real one with the real paintings. Come with me. One by one, they nodded. We left Etta's room together, walking toward whatever waited on the other side of that key. Behind us, the morning sun broke through the clouds, painting the world in shades of possibility. 6 months after Etta's death, I stood in my new studio, her old attic transformed. Sunlight streamed through skylights we'd installed, illuminating the space where her hidden paintings had once been stored. Now those same works hung in the Monroe Emerson Gallery downtown, their true history documented for all to see. The door creaked open behind me. Livia stood there, looking different in jeans and a simple sweater, her designer clothes packed away with her old life. The scholarship committee is waiting, she said. First round of applications came in. I nodded, adding one final brushstroke to my latest piece, a portrait of Etta, surrounded by golden light and broken chains reforming into butterflies. How's Dad doing with the restoration project? I asked, cleaning my brush. Better. The therapist says working with his hands helps. She moved closer, studying the painting. He's cataloging every piece from Grandpa's collection. Making amends, I guess. And Mom, still trying to understand why her perfect family wasn't so perfect. Livia's laugh was softer now, less brittle. She's learning, though. We all are. I set down my palette, thinking about the diary I'd found in Etta's things last week. Pages filled with her own struggles against family expectations, her quiet acts of rebellion, her hope that someday the truth would heal rather than hurt. The divorce papers came through, Livia said quietly. Dax isn't contesting anything. Hard to contest from jail. Yeah, she touched the edge of my canvas. You made me look different in this one. More real. You are different. Because you broke everything? Because we all did. I met her eyes in the reflection of the window. And then we chose to rebuild. The scholarship meeting went quickly. 5 young artists selected for the first Etta Monroe Foundation grants. Mom cried when we announced the winners, Dad squeezed my hand, and Theo beamed from his seat on the committee. Later, as the sun set over the city, I found myself back in the studio. A letter from one of the top art schools in New York lay unopened on my desk. The same school I'd dreamed of attending before everything fell apart. You should open it, Mom said from the doorway. Etta would want you to. I'm not sure I want to leave anymore. I gestured at the studio, the gallery below, the life we were building from the ashes of our old one. There's still so much to do here. The gallery will be here when you get back. So will we. She picked up the letter. Sometimes the best way to honor a legacy is to build your own. I thought about Etta's diary, about her words on the last page. The truth isn't just what breaks us. It's what gives us the courage to become who we're meant to be. The letter opened easily under my fingers. Mom waited, watching as I read. Well, I got in. My voice shook. Full scholarship. She hugged me, and for the first time in years it felt real. No perfect facade, no hidden agendas. Just a mother and daughter holding on. Etta knew, she whispered. She always knew you'd fly. That night, I added the acceptance letter to my wall of memories, next to Etta's diary, the key to her attic, and a small sketch she'd made of me as a child, paintbrush in hand. Below it, I hung a new piece, a family portrait, but not like my angry exhibition painting. This one showed us as we were now, imperfect, healing, real. The golden chains were still there, but they weren't binding anymore. They were transforming, becoming bridges between who we were and who we could be. Just like Etta had always intended.